Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, what kind of snow job did Montgomery County and the state of Maryland do clearing Winter Storm Jonas? General Assembly happenings, and what can be learned from Walmart closing its Port Covington store? Also, the Iowa Caucus. They're coming up, and how important are they? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the former executive director of the Maryland Democratic Party and consultant, Rich Parsons. Conservative activist, Jerry Cave. Vice chair for the Maryland Republican Party, Eugene Craig. And political strategist, Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. I'm not exactly sure when the National Weather Service began to name winter storms like they do hurricanes, but I suppose it's better than having the media rack their pea-sized brains to come up with something catchy. You know, Snowmageddon, Snowzilla, Snow MG. However, I thought it was curious that they named the storm Jonas, since after all, the prophet Jonas, or Jonah, was swallowed by a whale for disobeying the Lord's will and shirking his duty. Did they really intend to name a storm after someone that the Lord was kind of unhappy with? Well, regardless of how it got its name, Winter Storm Jonas swallowed the DMV whole last Friday, deposited massive amounts of misery, and it's taken 7 days to escape the beast. Schools have been shut down for a week, businesses closed early, unessential federal government personnel, and according to Jerry, which one of them is essential, had liberal leave or in many cases 3 days off. The state of Maryland and the county had the responsibility for cleaning up after Jonas, and it had their own travails. Susan, after every major snowstorm, someone trots out the urban legend of how Chicago Mayor Michael Bilandic lost the mayoral election to unknown Jane Byrne because he didn't get the streets of Chicago plowed quickly enough. So the question is, how did the state and the county do, and how would you grade them?
Well, first of all, we're not in Chicago. We don't have the equipment that Chicago has. I would grade the county a solid B. They brought in 23 pieces of National Guard equipment, and they were able to handle every single request for dialysis and any other requests. They got all the roads cleaned, with the exception of a few by Tuesday morning. They learned that the 311 system wasn't so great. However, on the state side, remember, every road with a number on is a state road, so that's where the major problems were in the county, and I would give the state about a D+.
All right, Rich,
well,
was your street cleared by 7 a.m. Tuesday?
Not 7 a.m. Tuesday. By 7 a.m. Wednesday it was, but I think Susan's grading on a curve. I would give the county and the state about an equal D+, not an F, because this was a pretty big storm. Maybe I give them a D. But I think the delays, if you look at most of the other cities hit by the storm were back at school 2 days later. We'd missed a whole week.
The county,
Philadelphia,
all the counties around.
Philadelphia, got hit by just as much snow as we got hit. New York had most of its street cleared in a day. So we still have a ways to go to get to the A or B range. I think the delay in getting out to some of the neighborhoods, a bit understandable if they're focused on main roads. I give the state the low grade because they're still major roads with only one lane.
The state is ridiculous.
It's
Jerry,
ridiculous for it to take this long.
I've lived here my whole life, so I can cite all the way back to colonial days. On the one hand, Maryland and Virginia just don't get enough snow consistently at this level to have the equipment be prepared for it.
Right.
On the other hand, this is the nation's capital. And as much as I hate the federal government, this is a great opportunity for the feds and the state and the municipalities and the counties to work together, coordinate, and deal with this kind of thing. The federal government ought to be more involved. And it is a great dry run because one day, this may shock you, we may get a terrorist or some other event, and this would be a good dry run for that. So this is the kind of thing that really the feds ought to be involved in, and it would be a good practice run for them.
Let's get a grade, Jerry.
You know what? I took it off the syllabus. And if you've been paying attention, I gave you a much better answer than A, B, C, D, or F.
Eugene, save him.
Well, I'm going to come in and say, I'll give the state a B. From the onset, Governor Hogan jumped into action. He was, communicated an emergency plan with the citizens from the onset. I know the different counties at the county level each performed differently. Baltimore County, our roads are pretty solid. I know down here there's still some really, one laning going on as if this is like a all-around metro system. I would give the state a B, and county's probably about C minus, C plus.
I will say, though, that everybody, I think, would give kudos to Pepco. There were very few power outages, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, and
they've come a long way.
Getting beyond the simplistic grading, which I think we should, Pepco, definitely this is a shining moment for them. This was a just off the top great performance by our electric utilities, very few outages. Some of the other things like the communication system the county had in place, there's some particular failures. That map that they showed
they're working on
didn't
it.
work, really needs some help. So, and Jerry's right, yes, we don't get these storms often, thankfully, here. But there's a lot of the response that could really be improved.
Wait a
we
minute,
have to
wait a
remember
minute.
there was 38.5 inches of snow in the
Susan.
Gaithersburg area.
Look, you're
It
from
was in the
Minnesota.
top
would,
three
would
locations.
Minneapolis have been shut down like this? No. This is ridiculous.
They have the equipment that melts the snow. It's very different.
On Thursday morning, I drove from Gaithersburg to Rockville. Rockville Pike was shut down.
That's the state that just got a B from him.
You're right, Susan.
Listen,
It's the
we
state.
could have had the same conversation
state
20, 30,
dropped the
40
ball
years
on
from
this.
now.
But they're
and
supposed to
20
be
years from now.
coordinating.
The
They're
county
supposed
also
to-
dropped
they're
the
supposed
ball
to
on
be
this.
coordinating between the state and the county.
Hold on,
and-
hold
and
on.
they're in the region and communicating to the citizens. And I don't think a great job was done in those kind of
I think it
communications.
could have been a
I
lot
think we could
better.
have been much faster.
And I think,
at getting
The important thing is what Rich said
I
is
think
that
the
I was
communication
right.
For both the
Wait,
county,
there's
wait a minute, you're not going to have the last word. I've got the last word. The county and the state didn't do a great job communicating. I think Virginia and D.C. did a far better job communicating, and we need some improvement here. So that's the last word. I'm going on to the next topic. The second week of the General Assembly before Jonas descended on Annapolis saw much of the usual jockeying by position for position. Governor Hogan, Senate Leader Mike Miller, and Speaker Mike Bush, they all played the game pretty well. Much of the action was focused on how fast the General Assembly could spend the projected budget surplus that Governor Hogan delivered during his first term. Miller and Bush want mandatory spending for a new hospital in PG County. Speaker Bush wants to make community colleges free. Everybody's got some little pet project. Eugene, what's your perspective on how well the governor and the General Assembly are working together?
Well, let me tell you something. The governor has extended the olive branch on many occasions, but Miller and Bush up to their usual games. Never seen a tax they didn't like, and never seen a dollar they couldn't spend. They led off this cycle with overturning the governor's veto on the hotels tax, on the online tax for hotels. I think the one saving grace that we have here at the state is that they can't add to the budget; they can only take away.
Susan, in a different topic, Senator Karen Montgomery resigned her Senate seat last year, and Craig Zucker has been offered as her replacement. What's behind the tug of war between the governor and Mike Miller on when he's going to be confirmed?
There is an override waiting in the Senate on allowing persons when they are released from prison to vote. And that vote has not been taken in the Senate yet. And so Miller is waiting to take that vote when Zucker gets there. And so we will see. I just want to make one quick response. Marriott wanted that tax. And everybody, the business community was behind that tax. The governor was wrong on that tax. There.
Well, Marriott wanted the tax because they thought somebody else wasn't
unfair.
wasn't
It's
being
unfair
And
competition.
Susan's right. There was
All
a
right.
lot of business support for that move.
The chambers of commerce across the
All right,
state
well,
were in
if-
favor of it.
Hey, if the citizens of Maryland wanted more taxes, we would have a brown almond administration right now. Governor Hogan delivered on his promise of no new taxes, and with that veto, and I think it was the right move, right decision. That he made.
If an employer like Marriott left the state, the hole that would leave in our local economy and the state's economy would far.
Well, we're going to get
Well,
to that.
well, if that
We're
was
going to
anything
get that because, Rich, a couple weeks ago, Walmart announced that it was closing one of its stores at Port Covington. It also announced that it would not go forward on a proposed store in the Skyland section of District of Columbia. And in the face of criticism, Walmart said it's because they were pulling out of the deal because of the proposed increase in the minimum wage and proposals for mandatory family leave. Governments have to take acknowledgement of what business wants. So was this the right thing to do?
Was what the right thing to do?
Was
Get rid of the hotel or do
But
this
should the
hotel
gov-
tax?
should
Yes,
government
it was
take-
because what's implicit in your question is should the state of Maryland and local governments here do more listening to business to keep the state competitive? Absolutely yes, but no businesses were pushing to veto that bill. Business has been asking to do all kinds of good things that this state needs to do to make us more competitive for business location. That whole Augustine Commission report came out with some great recommendations to lower the right taxes, to make the state more competitive from a business standpoint. You know, what we are frustrated with as a business person myself is we don't see a lot of people in either party really listening to the recommendations of business. Some taxes, the business community supported increasing the gas tax because we need the investment in transportation infrastructure that is dedicated to. We would love to see all kinds of relief from regulatory burdens and at least stop making things worse on things like mandatory sick leave and things like that. That's what business community has been asking for, and the state legislature should listen to that. But this wasn't one of the things business was
I
asking
don't
for.
want to get lost
So
on
the
the
government wasn't right on
I
that.
don't want to get lost on the veto.
I think it's interesting, with the selective outrage when it comes to business and Democrats. Here you have a tax that's overwritten, that was vetoed and overwritten. It's chair for it, but it's chair for business. But when we had Beretta here, literally begging our General Assembly not to push through SB 281, where they're producing a product that they literally can't sell in the state that they're headquartered anymore. There was no outrage about it.
I would hardly call the Marriott Corporation a Democratic organization. I mean, they are far on the right.
Well, look, I mean, we're getting lost on this one tax.
No.
I think the
The
point
broader
is
point is
there
General
has to be
Assembly
a
should
favorable
tread very
business.
Absolutely.
There
carefully
has to be a
because-
favorable
right.
business community.
And we don't have it, and that we can all agree.
Not only we
I think
don't have it, the only part of the state that does well is part of the benefits from the federal government in the Baltimore-Washington corridor, or from one of the military bases like Fort Meade or Pax River. If you look at Western Maryland, we're not doing well economically, or the Eastern Shore, because the Democrats who run this state, they run the legislature, have too many taxes, and they're dependent on the federal government, and it is extremely stupid. And Governor Hogan has extended many olive branches to the Democrats, and all they do is make a bonfire out of it. We have got, and I'll tell you, if you want to look at where the state ought to spend money, they ought to spend money on having better tax code, but putting it into vocational
It starts by-
education. I
there's a
can't tell
bipartisan
you
commission
how
report out
many.
there.
I can't tell you how many heating, air conditioning
Augustine
builders
Commission
have
is a
said
bipartisan
they need
effort
more
that lays
people
out
that
a
are
good
trained.
roadmap.
All right.
If you want a good roadmap,
Rich,
it's
wind
a
it up.
bipartisan issue. The state should listen to the Augustine Commission and follow some of those recommendations.
All right, that's it. We got to go. We've got a hard break, and when we come back from this short break, the preseason is over. The first primary is next week. We'll be back with predictions. And welcome back. While Donald Trump continues to dominate media coverage of the Iowa primaries, behind the scene, candidates for both parties are anxiously waiting for the first real vote in the presidential contest. Rich, what is your take on the Democratic race?
Well, it's been tightening in a lot of the national polls and in some of the Iowa polling between Sanders and Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton. The polls have been back and forth over the last several months, but there's an interesting dynamic in the numbers. If you look at polls of registered voters, Hillary seems to have a bit of an edge compared to other polls that are just using random digit dialing and sampling all adults, including people who are not registered to vote, where Sanders has a substantial edge. So as we get into the final days in this caucus, which is a very low turnout event, it's going to be interesting to see if that discrepancy plays out the way I expect it to, which is Hillary Clinton's going to win. It's going to be close, but I think she's going to win that.
Susan.
One of the problems that they're having a hard time polling now is because so many people don't have landlines. And that is going to be an issue that is coming up in research of all kinds across the country. Today, an interesting organization, I don't recall the name now, but totally unaffiliated with anything, came out an analysis of Senator Sanders' approach to taxes. And under Senator Sanders, taxes would go up 9%, and the general economy money coming in would go down 12%. And I really do think that those numbers, and people are beginning to have a second thought about what Bernie Sanders, the socialist, would mean. And I do believe that Hillary will forsake all
So
and
you're not
win
feeling the burn.
Never have.
All right.
No burn here.
Okay. Eugene, in the Republican race, did anything change after Thursday's debate and the Trump sideshow?
Oh, absolutely. I think for the first time you saw what a Trump-less election cycle would look like. You saw, Rand Paul get a chance to shine. You saw Cruz take the mantle as the punching bag. I think Rubio had some pretty good spots, and I think WAPO came out and said Jeb Bush had the best night. I think the race as it is right now, I think, all the polls are going to be wrong come on caucus day on Monday, and I think we're in for a couple surprises.
Jerry.
I think we saw, with a Trumpless debate, I thought we saw a great discussion of the issues and people got to speak out. Yes, it really was that boring. What you're missing, guys, is Donald Trump has taken the biggest adversary conservatives have had for 60 years, which is a hostile, dishonest press. They hate him more than any conservative, and they can't stop covering him. Even when he's not in it, he dominates the thing. The guy is a media genius. He understands television like nobody's business. It's unbelievable. If Trump wins Iowa, it's over. If he doesn't win, he's still going to win.
So that was the question I was going to pose. How important is Iowa?
Iowa's really important,
Critical.
and it's striking that Iowa's both very important and totally unrepresentative of everything else.
Yeah. As
First
is
of all,
New
because
Hampshire.
a caucus is a different animal than a primary. New Hampshire is actually a much more broadly participatory event. A significant portion of people will actually vote in New Hampshire. The caucus process really favors groups with the best organization. And while Trump has clearly done and Jerry's right twice in one show. I'm wondering if lightning's going to strike us here. But Trump has mastered the media. The question is, does he have the ground troops?
He doesn't need all that. That's what you don't get.
He doesn't have
consultants. He doesn't have an
For a caucus state, you need that ground game, and that's where we'll be interesting to see.
Wins, it's over.
I actually think
last night Congressman Davis, after the debate, said this debate tonight was like ginger ale without the fizz, which was an interesting statement.
Wait a minute, have you been watching the Democratic debates? Talk about dry and pain.
Well, no, Saturday night during football games.
They talk about issues. And
Susan, you can drink the Kool-Aid.
Oh my God, they had the Democratic event, and they don't ask Hillary about the.
What's the story on the Iowa caucus?
I think that you're going to have a couple surprises on Monday night. And I think those surprises are going to continue in New Hampshire. I don't think we come out of this process with an actual hard nominee as we have in the past because of the way it's set up.
And I want to say there's a difference in Iowa between the Democratic and the Republican caucus. In Minnesota and in Iowa, for the Democratic side, you have to have 15% viability. If you don't have 15%, you don't have it. You don't have that on the Republican side. You sit around and talk, and people try to persuade you, like Casey, please vote for Donald Trump as opposed to Ted Cruz. However, they don't have that viability. They don't talk about issues, and they can be done in 5 minutes. They vote on a sheet of paper and walk out. The Democrats make it very
That's an actual
complicated.
disadvantage for Donald Trump because whatever he shows up in the polls, he has more support than that because there's a lot of people that like him, but they're embarrassed to say that in front of other people. I know.
Well, I'll put it this way. I'll put it this way. In 2012, let's give a historical perspective. This same week in 2012, no poll had Rick Santorum coming in #1 and Ron Paul coming in #3. And, Iowa caucus night.
But it was totally irrelevant.
And Mitt Romney, they said won.
Iowa
and
is
then
not reflective of
anything.
elections come out. But it's important because it sets momentum.
It does establish momentum.
It also tests your organization.
What's most
chops.
important
but
is if we didn't have this going on, we'd have to watch
But
Netflix
I'll make
everybody
another
else.
prediction here. If the polls and the Iowa caucus do not line up, this may be the last year you see Iowa have that coveted first in the nation spot.
I don't know about that. It's going to be awful hard to
Actually,
change.
rather insightful.
So here's the discussion point that's going on in the Democratic Party. That if Bernie wins Iowa and he wins New Hampshire, it's totally irrelevant because there is a firewall down south. Today it was announced that on Hillary Clinton's server there were 22 above top secret messages. Is that going to affect how people look at
there
Hillary?
were 7,
and the other
I believe.
Susan, let me finish. And the other question is, are many of the younger voters in the Democratic Party just tired of the Clintons?
Absolutely.
I think that there were 7 actually, and they had been reclassified
Yeah, they
since then till now. They were
Right, they were not-
reclassified.
Well, hold on.
else in the
That
federal
was 7.
government did
That
this
was
would be
7
under
too many.
Look, this is the point. The American people want to see some action on things like jobs and getting the economy back on track,
Bingo.
protecting the safety of this country. They don't give a you-know-what about this whole
And
controversy.
you know what I
and the
found
Republicans
out?
are totally
Wait a minute.
missing the boat to keep raising
Last-
this. It's a
last
false
night-
issue.
Wait a minute.
That's
Last
nothing to
night
do with
at
who's
the
qualified to be
debate,
president.
All they talked about, and I listened for 45 minutes, the name Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama was said more than anything else.
Well, what do you expect, Susan?
Why don't they? It is
Oh,
a
unless it's
primary.
Trump talking about
They say
China.
the same thing to
China,
the
China,
Democrats.
China.
No, they don't.
Hold on, wait.
Oh my God, they railed
if
on
we're gonna-
Bush as if it
guys,
was a
I
job.
want to bring this. I want to bring this back.
It's not a big issue.
Oh, it's a huge issue.
I
not.
think Clinton fatigue.
You
is the
wish it
issue.
were.
We'll see. I very
She's
much
not
doubt that
likable,
it's true.
She's not doesn't good
Look,
do
there
But
are-
under her husband's presidency, the United States had the most prolonged period
She
of
is
with a
of
Republican
Congress.
not him.
productivity
Any other
and
civil
prosperity in
servant-
our
And
history.
she is smart.
People
and she's
remember the Clinton
capable,
years.
and she's going to do a great
Any
job.
other civil
Man,
servant-
get over
moderate.
it. We could have a woman president.
Oh.
That's a
Oh,
problem.
Susan,
And
why do
she
you
can
think
pick
it's a
up
sex
moderate
thing?
Republican
Why do you
votes.
think it's a sex thing?
Because
It's
it
not.
is with men.
No,
It's not.
Susan.
No, it's not.
It is with you.
No.
It may not be with anybody else.
No, there are
You're
women.
the only one who's concerned about it.
No, there-
nobody on this panel has said she's not qualified because she's a woman. We've said she's not qualified because she's a congenital liar. That's the
Anybody-
reason.
Any
your
other
opinion.
civil
That's just
servant
one of her
does what
qualities.
she does, they're
right.
walking out there 80
You know, you make that statement to
Right.
her. There's no fact checker who is giving passing grades to any of the Republicans in this field.
All right, we got it. This is great.
Talk about
This is
lying.
so
Look at
much-
Ted Cruz.
This is great. This is gonna be raw meat to a hungry dog for the next 9 months. Stay tuned for Parting Shots. And welcome back. We've been duking it out for the last 60 seconds. Rich Parsons, your parting shot.
I want to dedicate my parting shot today to some real heroes that emerged from the storm we know as Jonas. And we talked about Pepco a little bit, but really I can't say enough about the great job that their crews did keeping our power on throughout a really historic snowfall event. A great piece of work there, but I also want to give credit to my neighbors. On day 3 after seeing no plow, we were starting to get desperate and my sister had to get home. Some of my neighbors down the street had a snowblower, others pitched in with shovels. We actually dug out our own street, totally about 200 yards of street that we together as a neighborhood dug out. So my neighborhood just had a nice response. We came together as any community would, I think, when tested by the elements. And I think there were some heroes that came out of Jonas as well as some people that didn't do quite so well.
Thank you, Rich. Susan Heltemes, your parting shot.
This weekend, District 18 Democratic activist Michael Griffiths is going to be buried, and his enthusiasm will be missed. But I know that he's smiling from above because this week 2 things happened. The Supreme Court ruled that teenagers who are sent to prison without the possibility of parole now have to have the opportunity for parole. And President Obama also passed the pen and said that teenagers can no longer be kept in solitary confinement in prison. This was a great week for young people.
Or in prison. Eugene, your parting shot.
Actually, if I could piggyback on Susan, I think it was actually an amazing week for young people. Over last week, actually right during the beginning of Jonas, the March for Life took place down in D.C. And it was an overwhelmingly young crowd, which probably more so isn't necessarily covered by the media as much. But I think my biggest parting shot, I think we may have officially, after Monday, started the Martin O'Malley Dropout Watch.
Jerry, You got about 45 seconds to wrap it up.
In addition to pointing out that Donald Trump has put the media on its ear, which has been our biggest adversary, the other thing he has done, which was evidenced by Peggy Noonan in the Wall Street Journal, is that 20% of his ardent supporters come out of the Democratic Party, Independent Party, working class Americans really like him. These are people that used to be called Reagan Democrats. And the only people that hate him more for doing this than the Democrats are the GOP elitists. And if they think they hate him now, when he's president, they'll hate him even more. But I would like to finish by saying a nice thing about how enjoyable it has been to be on this show with Eugene, who I find insightful. I shall continue to be incendiary.
All right, panel. I can't certainly top that. I want to thank you for being here, taking your evening for tuning in, for being here and discussing these topics. We want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. And remember, you can like us on Facebook, you can follow us on Twitter, and you can watch us on YouTube. For 21 This Week, I'm Casey Aiken.
Did anybody